There's one car, just one, that as a teenager you wanted, lusted after, just had to have, and one day, gosh darn it, you were going to get it. Well, for me that car was a red Mark I Toyota MR2, T-Bar if I could get it, and like many of you, I'm still waiting to get one. In the 1970s and 80s, Japanese car companies were trying to break away from their reputation of cheap yet reliable econo boxes. One way was to produce a sports car. Nissan were the first to gain prominence with the 240Z, but Toyota charted their own path with their interpretation of a small European sports car, the MR2. They would make three very distinct models over 23 years, but why was each so different, and when is the fourth generation car supposed to appear? This is the Toyota MR2 story. The MR2 can trace its origins back to 1976. Toyota were known for inexpensive, economical cars which didn't give much excitement. Their Datsun Z-car competitor, the Supra, was still 2 years from production, but Toyota saw a gap in the market for a small car that was fun to drive yet economical. This wasn't necessarily a sports car, but that wasn't ruled out. The chief development officer for the project was Akio Yoshida. He'd had experience working in California and appreciated the car culture there with their love of small British MGs and Triumph sports cars. Toyota's sales were growing steadily in North America and their operation were crying out for their own small sports car, so it was natural to consider a fuel-efficient two-seater, something that could be used for the commute during the week and for fun at the weekend. But the fuel crisis in the mid-70s forced a change of priorities. Would more people take the bus now that fuel prices were now 4 times as much? Not if Toyota could help it. They threw their weight behind research and development for more fuel-efficient cars, and the idea of a fun car was shelved. But it was brought back to life in 1979 as a pure sports car project. There was great excitement in the design team about this. A sports car was an exciting thing to be working on, and some gave up their spare time and holidays. They took inspiration from previous Toyotas such as the 1965 Sports 800 and the Toyota Jaguar E-Type wannabe, the 2000 GT. But other cars were studied as well, such as the Ferrari 308 GTB, Lotus Esprit and the Matra Murena. No ideas were off limits, but the team settled on a mid-engine layout mounted transversely. A glass cover for the engine was considered, but it made the engine bay impossibly hot. Platform testing took place in both Japan and California, tested by none other than professional motorsports legend Dan Gurney, the only American to have won a Formula One race in an American-made car, and winner of the first unsanctioned coast-to-coast cannonball run in 1971. It was expert feedback like this that honed the platform into a true driver's car. But it was always a compromise. The car had to handle well, but it also had to cruise at close to 120 miles an hour on the Autobahn without feeling dangerous. The first prototype broke cover in 1981 as the Toyota SAX. That's A as in saxophone and not the other word. The angular wedge shape showed the direction the final car would go and seemed to have shades of the equally angular wedge-shaped Triumph TR7 that was about to enter production. But clearly the main influence was the Fiat X19. Both cars were mid-engined and looked surprisingly similar. This was at odds with other car makers that were moving towards rounded shapes. Although it could be seen as just another Japanese car company copying a European design, project leader Akio Yoshida insisted that they were aiming for an original style. As he said, the design inspiration came from the curved katana samurai sword. Toyota are certainly guilty of lifting others' designs in the early days, but now the shoe's on the other foot. The Chinese Great Wall Cool Bear can be seen as a blatant rip-off of Toyota's Scion XB. There was the usual Toyota attention to detail. Door handles and bumpers were flush to reduce drag to make the car as fast as possible. This was more than just an outlandish concept to increase the public's excitement in Toyota. This was a step along the way to making a real car. Small two-seaters can be a squash for all but the smallest people. Toyota's sports car was destined for North America, a land of tall people, so the team focused on easy entry and exit. It might be a small car, but the interior space would be generous. Despite this, driver and passenger were divided by a large hump, similar to the Lotus Esprit. The Esprit used it to hide the structural backbone of the car. Toyota used it to hide the fuel tank that helped give the car near perfect weight distribution. The 1960s Sports 800 had been underpowered with a tiny 800cc engine. That had never made it to North America, as Toyota knew it would never have stood a chance. But the new car needed an engine that would compete against cars like the new Pontiac Fiero. The A engine from the Tercel and Corolla seemed perfect. It gave good power, especially with double overhead cams and 4 valves per cylinder. At low revs, 4 valves became 2 to increase torque. This gave a respectable 112 horsepower, which in a small, light car got it to 60 in 8.4 seconds, enough to keep up with a Porsche 944. With fuel injection and being less than 1.6 litres, it also gave good fuel economy. No wonder then that Lotus were looking to use it for their own aborted small sports car project. The path from concept to production is lined with walls of reality. Yes, Toyota wanted those streamlined bumpers, but they'd be expensive to produce. How about something not quite as streamlined, but a lot more cost effective? Maybe the whole car needs to be a little bit larger because it still can't comfortably accommodate large passengers, and in any case it'll improve straight line performance. Oh, and add a spoiler to help high-speed stability. The car also got more pronounced side skirts to disguise the fact that this was a relatively tall car, taller than the Pontiac Fiero and Fiat X19 at any rate. The next 2 years had Toyota getting the design close to production, so when the new SV3 concept broke cover at the 1983 Tokyo Motor Show, the shape closely resembled what would go into production. Toyota would of course have a large stand at this show, and the new SV3 concept was the centre of attention. The public was excited by this concept and even happier when Toyota told them that they could buy their own in just a year. After the glitz of the show, Toyota got down to the hard work of getting the car to production. The digital instrument panel from the SV3 looked cool, but it was costly. Sports cars never sell in great numbers, so cost savings needed to be found somewhere. So switchgear and dials came from existing cars, and the pop-up headlight mechanism was lifted from the Celica. The final interior cocooned the driver and added a sense of drama, but funky features from the concept such as headrest-mounted intercoms were ditched. Another thing that was ditched was the SV3 name. Toyota's new car would be known as the MR2 for midship runabout, and 2 because it had 2 seats. Like all mass-market cars, and especially Toyotas, the MR2 had to work in all conditions, so test cars were shipped off all over the world to endure extreme conditions and high autobahn speeds. That showed up some issues with the spoiler, so it was revised. The MR2 was subjected to a continual stream of water to be sure that there would be no surprises. This was a time when Toyota was constantly redefining its high standards of fit and finish, especially with the new Lexus project. The Toyota MR2 launched at a glitzy Tokyo press conference, as Japan was expected to be the second largest market behind North America, and Japan would get a budget model, the MR2S, without many of the bells and whistles. Its smaller 1.5 litre engine didn't have the powerful twin-cam goodness, but Japanese buyers knew what they wanted, and it wasn't the MR2S. 60% of them went for the top-of-the-range G Limited in its two-tone hotness. In early 1985, the MR2 made it to North America, where sales were brisk, thanks to glowing press reviews of course. In a market used to European sports cars from the 60s and 70s, the MR2 was a breath of fresh air. The interior had been ergonomically designed and it just worked like any other Toyota. Even though the engine screamed behind you just inches from your ears, it was remarkably quiet. Unlike some of those European cars from the 60s and 70s, it could be ordered with an automatic gearbox and air conditioning. It made the Fiat X19 look pedestrian with a 0 to 60 time of 7.5 seconds. It was more spacious inside than the Pontiac Fiero and, most importantly, faster, as the Fiero's 2.5-litre engine had been tuned for maximum fuel economy. It was clear that Toyota could not only make small economical cars better than the West, but it had made a sports car that beat them as well. Even the unfavourable exchange rate that made the MR2 expensive was an advantage. Toyotas were quality vehicles and were being priced as such. Customers looked at Toyota in a new light. Was this the best small sports car, irrespective of price? The MR2 made it to Europe in early 1985. The French Wikipedia page says that the car is called the Toyota MR2 everywhere in the world except for French-speaking countries, where commercially the MR2 name leaves something to be desired. What they're referring to is the letters MR2 or MR2 when said in French, are very close to the French word for merde, which is the French colloquialism for poop. The Toyota poop was less than desirable, so the car was renamed the Toyota MR, or should that be Monsieur Toyota? Regardless, most MR2s that shipped to Europe ended up in the UK, not on the continent. Interestingly, Car Magazine compared it to the Ford Escort RS Turbo. Although both cost about the same and had similar performance figures, the MR2 came out on top in everything but practicality. Maybe Toyota took inspiration from this comparison with their MR2 rally car, the 222D. But the short wheelbase was hard to control. Only 3 were ever made, as Toyota decided this wasn't the right path to take. On the front of each road-going MR2 was a rather odd-looking bird symbol that Toyota said was supposed to represent aerodynamic beauty through evolution. That created more questions than answers, but owners just called it the Screaming Chicken. The MR2 went down well in California, where the sun always shone. Air conditioning was a plus, but what owners really wanted to do was take the roof off. The car had never been conceived as an open top, and making a seamless convertible for a reasonable price would have meant a major redesign, although a handful of semi-official conversions were attempted. Fiat produced a Targa version of the X19, so Toyota designed their own, the T-Bar. Both roof panels could be removed and stowed conveniently behind the driver's and passenger's seats. The Fiero might be losing out on power, but that was easy to change. After all, American automakers' default position was power, not fuel economy. The Fiero got a 140 horsepower 2.8-litre V6, and the MR2 had to respond. Toyota fitted a supercharger matching the Fiero in power, but beating it on the drag strip. Despite these improvements, Toyota was learning that sports car buyers were a fashion-conscious bunch. The MR2 was expensive and soon customers were looking elsewhere. No wonder that Fiat had done little to update the X19 since 1972. There weren't enough sales to justify the cost. But Toyota felt that early sales of the MR2 justified a second-generation car. It was clear that exchange rates meant the car wouldn't be cheap, so Toyota moved upmarket. The new car would have more passenger space, more luggage capacity, and a larger fuel tank. That was what North American customers were telling them that they wanted. But most importantly, it would have killer looks that would grace a car double the price. Cars had softer, rounder lines, and the new car would be no exception. And unlike the first generation car, this wouldn't imitate existing cars, but would strike out with its own bold design. An internal design competition threw up conventional and boundary-pushing designs, but by the clay model stage, all the teams had coalesced around a similar shape, not surprising as Toyota's mantra was low drag efficiency. A T-bar was planned from the outset, so the new larger body was made stiffer to compensate. The central fuel tank also played a part in structural rigidity. This all meant for a quieter car with fewer vibrations. The interior was made even quieter by using the new sound deadening material from the upcoming Lexus LS400. Again, Toyota turned to official badass Dan Gurney to fine-tune the whole package. The larger, heavier car would need a bigger 2-litre engine, and power increased across the range. This would give the car a higher top speed, but roughly similar acceleration. The mid-engine transverse design meant Toyota could use almost any engine from their range, as all they were doing was moving it from the front of the car to the back. This was the same trick that Rover used with the K-Series engine on the MGF in the mid-90s. The radiator moved to the front, which meant less to stuff into the cramped engine bay and placed less importance on optimizing the side scoops. Supercharging gave way to turbocharging, with the whole package lifted from the Celica, producing a 6.3 second 0 to 60 time. All that power needed stopping, so ABS was included to help you stop, and a driver's side airbag in case you didn't. Inside it was similar to the previous model, but with updated controls and instruments, again from the Toyota parts bin. For the first time, the interior was designed with the audio system in mind, so a couple of bass speakers could be installed behind the seats. Practical measures like an immobilizer helped ensure that the new model wouldn't be as popular to steal as the old one had been. The second generation MR2 launched in 1989, again at the Tokyo Motor Show, 6 years after the original. Toyota took it on a nationwide roadshow tour, with the low loader opening up to reveal the new car. Again, the public loved it, as did the press, comparing its looks favourably to the Ferrari Testarossa, but it would take 8 months until it made it to the UK and a year until North American drivers could get behind the wheel. That delay was a problem, as another car was taking North America and Europe by storm, the new Mazda MX-5. If you remember, American market studies had shown that customers wanted more space and didn't mind a larger, heavier car. Toyota were to find that market studies weren't to be trusted. What American customers actually wanted was the smaller, lighter, open-top MX-5. The MR2 was a great car, solid, reliable, high quality, but although on paper the new MR2 was faster, with a lower rev limit and a heavier body, it ended up being less fun. And wasn't that the whole point of a sports car? Although initial MR2 sales were good, they quickly dropped off and weren't a patch on MX-5 sales. Like the first generation, the car was expensive, but unlike the first generation car, customers could buy sporty cars with the same quality now, such as the 1992 Honda Del Sol. Worse was to come. Car Magazine in the UK ran a front cover story detailing how easy it was for novice drivers to lose control when hitting a corner too fast and backing off the throttle. The car's snap oversteer would put you in a hedge, or worse. Not the fun car that Toyota was hoping for, but at least owners were happy that they'd fitted an airbag. Toyota rushed to fix the problem, but the story had dented public confidence. Regardless, the MR2 would prove what a great handling car it was in several motorsport series throughout the 1990s, winning many accolades. And Australians could buy a lightweight, stripped-back track version of the MR2, the Bathurst Special Edition, that would also compete in Australian motorsports events to drum up interest. 1992 and 1993 would bring more handling improvements and a performance boost from the work done on the Celica's turbocharged engine. So much so that the MR2 beat a Ferrari Mondial in a drag race. Admittedly, the 13-year-old Mondial was about to end production, but hey, Toyota could beat a Ferrari, so that was something that they could shout about, and something that MR2 fans could brag about down the pub. The performance upgrades never made it to the USA because sales weren't high enough to justify the work to recertify it. Sales in what should have been the MR2's largest market ended in 1995 with no sign of a replacement. Although the MR2 had been designed to please Americans, it carried on being sold in the rest of the world, although it didn't help that the second largest market, Japan, was entering a 10-year economic recession, and the UK market, the third largest market, was suffering from a joyriding epidemic that was limiting interest in fast cars. Regardless, Toyota celebrated the MR2's 10th anniversary with a special edition in both Japan and the UK. And to give the car a little bit more pizzazz, they offered an aftermarket body kit upgrade through their motorsports division as the TRD 2000 GT, presumably named in honour of the Toyota 2000 GT from the 1960s. The MR2's engine got variable valve timing late in its life to give it another performance boost, but maybe because of the age of the MR2, only around 1,000 of them were built. Like the first generation car, there were limited attempts at making a convertible MR2, this time by Toyota Technocraft. Toyota finally got the hint. People wanted an open-top MR2. Or maybe it was the phenomenal sales of the Mazda MX-5 that encouraged Toyota to look at making the third generation car convertible. After all, the original small lightweight MR2 had been a big hit. Surely an open-top, mid-engined, lightweight MR2 could also be a hit. The new car started out as a skunkworks project. With no one officially working on it, a team of engineers were told they'd been given a training project to chop an MR2 in half, shorten it and install a smaller 1.8 litre engine. The team did such a good job that when Toyota's management saw the result, they agreed to produce a full concept for the 1995 Tokyo Motor Show, the MRJ. Toyota took note of the Honda CRX Del Sol's crazy motorized, removable trans-top roof and fitted the MRJ with their own version. It would also be the first MR2 with rear seats. Microscopically tiny seats, but seats nonetheless. And what's more, they could be folded to make the boot larger. It also included four-wheel steering, which was featured on several Japanese cars of the time. Toyota liked the small open-top design, but all those gadgets didn't help the goal of making this an inexpensive, lightweight car. What's more, Toyota was focused on perfecting eco-technologies like the hybrid drivetrain. Sports cars might bring some cachet to the brand, but given sales of the previous car, the new MR2 needed to be made on a tight budget. The new car was lighter, so the engine could be smaller. Toyota picked the 1.8 litre 138 horsepower 1ZZ 4-cylinder, which was the successor to the original MR2 engine. This was barely more power than the original car, but as the MX-5 showed, a fun sports car wasn't all about raw power, and this engine allowed the new MR2 to be the most fuel-efficient car in its class. It was allied to a 5-speed manual or a 5-speed automatic, and would be the first Japanese car to use a sequential gearbox. The team were obsessed with weight to make sure that this was the nimble handling car that they knew that they could produce. It helped it had a small engine and lacked a roof, of course. Team members who saved the least amount of weight would be named and shamed. In the end, the car came in 254 kilograms lighter than the old car, the weight of a vending machine with all its sweet delights. This and the small engine meant that, like the previous car, the new car had roughly the same acceleration as the original MR2. This work in progress was shown at the 1997 Tokyo Motor Show as the MRS. The MX-5 style door handles showed exactly what car Toyota were gunning for, and with MX-5 sales still good, Toyota and their North American dealers saw good potential in the new car, and it got the green light for production. The next 2 years were spent getting the next MR2 ready for production. From the outside, it seems Toyota just tinkered with the design with slightly larger side air intakes. Like the first and second generation cars, inside the new model was black throughout with off-the-shelf components. This was no bad thing though. It gave the car features and technology it wouldn't otherwise have had for the price, but it lacked the drama of cars like the Audi TT. With the fuel tank now behind the driver and below the engine, the large hump between the driver and passenger disappeared. Handling was critical. Toyota didn't want a repeat of the snap oversteer debacle, so even though the new car was 29 centimeters or almost a foot shorter than the old car, the wheelbase was actually 5 centimeters or 2 inches longer, with the wheels pushed to the ends of the car. There wasn't space for a rear boot in the new model. Owners would need to use the limited storage up front and behind the seats. The suspension layout was similar to the previous 2-generation cars. After all, if it's not broken, then why fix it? Extensive testing produced a car that behaved well around town and, most importantly, on the edge. The 1997 concept had rollover bars behind the driver and passenger, but like the BMW Z1, the new car would protect the driver in a rollover by strengthening the frame around the windscreen. It had a soft top that, like the second generation MX-5, used a glass rear window. Also, like the MX-5, there was the option of a removable 18-kilogram fiberglass hardtop. Like with the first generation car, extensive rain tests were conducted to be sure that the soft top, not a common Toyota part, would be bulletproof. Well, not exactly bulletproof, I mean it's just fabric, but at least rain and hail proof. Breaking with the past, the new car wouldn't be known as the MR2, in Japan at least. There it would be known as the MRS. In Europe, and especially France, you'd think that Toyota would get away from the whole MR2 Merde name thing, but France was a very small market, so in Europe it would still be known as the MR2, the MR2 Roadster, and in North America as the MR2 Spider. Toyota were clearly looking to take sales away from the popular MX-5, but some might say the MX-5 was a better looking car. In my eyes, the bulbous headlights on the MR2 made it look like it had been hit with an ugly stick. And it wasn't the car that people like me wanted, fans of the original MR2 who now finally had money to buy one. In fact, I rejected it as soon as I sat in one. I'm not that tall at 5'11", or more like 5'10" as I'm shrinking, but every time I changed gear, my knee hit the steering wheel. The interior was just too small. I bought a car that my whole family could fit in and had a lot more style, the Audi TT. It didn't help that Toyota was confused over what the target market should be. In Tokyo, they felt that this was a young person's car and they designed it with that in mind. But Toyota of Australia felt it would be bought by empty nesters who could finally buy a bit of fun. In the end, it appealed to neither demographic. Toyota set stupidly low sales targets. They expected to only sell 5,000 in the first year in the USA. The original MX-5 sold 36,000 and the original MR2 37,000 in their first full year of US sales. This allowed Toyota to claim success when they beat these modest goals, but 7,200 sales in their first year were hardly a knockout blow. In the UK, the cheaper MR2 was still outsold by the 5-year-old MGF made by a company that seemed to be on the brink of bankruptcy. But the press loved the handling and performance. It's ironic that the previous MR2 had been criticised for lacking fun. The new model had fixed that. Who would have known that a lighter car would be more agile? But customers weren't interested. If only they'd given it a test drive to give it a chance. Maybe those looks were getting in the way of the sale, so Toyota showed off a radical reinterpretation of their new car just over a year after launch as the Zagato VM180. Gone were the oversized cartoonish headlights and taillights for a meaner, more purposeful look. This was a car that you knew could handle a racetrack. Toyota showed off another concept the same year, a 5-second 0-60 souped-up track day concept that was designed to get the public excited about Toyota's debut into Formula One. Unfortunately, neither was sold in any volume. In 2003, both manual and automatic gearboxes got an extra gear. Outside, it got slight headlight and taillight changes, and there were a few tuning tweaks, but overall, it was a very similar car. 2004 brought some safety improvements. These all did little to get more people buying the MR2. Sales ended in North America in 2005 and production finished in 2007. That same year, Toyota were fighting to get their first win in Formula One after 5 years of trying, but they didn't have much of a sporty lineup to get customers interested in buying their passenger cars. Ever since the third generation car ended production, there have been rumours of a fourth generation, but it may still happen. Forbes reported that Toyota is teaming up with Daihatsu and Suzuki to produce a new small sports car in 2025. It'll use the platform from the GR Yaris and the 1-litre 3-cylinder 110 horsepower Suzuki engine tuned to 150 horsepower and mounted transversely in the middle of the car. One thing's clear though, it won't look anything like the photos that Forbes used in their article, which were actually fan art from Isa Mustonen in 2018 and not courtesy of Toyota as Forbes stated. Still, any new MR2 will have big shoes to fill, or should that be small mid-engine shoes? The original MR2 kick-started a change of attitude towards Toyota. Those inexpensive, economical cars could be fun as well. The second generation brought a level of maturity to the car, and the third generation reminded us that it wasn't just Lotus or Mazda that knew how to make lightweight, fun cars. And it's a car that will always be in my heart. Thanks for sharing the MR2 journey with me. There's videos about two other excellent two-seaters, the Mazda MX-5 and the MGF on the right. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.